and you can share, of course, your journey in trading, but let's
Well, I think, I think particularly with surfing, because again, I think the things are so, they're analogous.
Yeah.
Is analogous the proper pronunciation?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Yeah, but there's definitely a lot of similarities and a common thread between the two. I think just like recognizing the risk and how much is at stake. Because with surfing, I had a couple of really close friends of mine die surfing big waves, guys I grew up surfing with and idolizing and surfing really huge waves with and having some close calls with, and those guys died. So that was just a really huge wake-up call. And then I had 2 really close calls in really big waves where I nearly drowned 2 times where I felt like that was it. And so just being able to recognize how truly risky it is.
Welcome back, everybody, to the SteadyTrade Podcast. Tim, Bohen, and I today have a really cool guest. Shane Dorian is somebody that I am a secret fan of ever since I started to pay attention to surfing. And part of the reason Shane is here today is because for so many years as a coach, I spoke to emotions and how we have to surf emotions similar to the way somebody has to surf a wave. And then at some point, 4 years, 5 years saying that, I thought, I better know how to surf. I better learn how to surf if I'm going to use this metaphor all the time. So I took some surfing lessons on the Jersey Shore, not in Hawaii. Hawaii was not even in my eyes.
What are you surfing on the Jersey Shore? Like a trash can lid or what?
No, let me tell you, it's serious surfing in Jersey. It is not for the faint-hearted. I almost drowned in Jersey on those waves. So trust me, it's serious there. But so Shane Dorian, let me just sing his praises for a minute. So he is an American surfer born in Kailua Kona, which is the island I live on now. Shane lives here still. He spent 11 years on the World Championship Tour as a pro surfer, and then he quit competitive surfing in 2003 so that he could focus on big waves. He's one of the best big wave surfers in the world, and if you guys don't understand or know what big waves are, you really should just Google that, and you will just have your breath taken out of your body because it is just so harrowing. I can't even say. And he also does a little bit of trading, which, I found out from him. So he's going to talk or not talk about that as much as he wants. But I feel that there's so much similarity between the emotional stamina and discipline that you have to have as a trader that can relate to surfing, which is why we invited him here. So welcome, Shane. Thank you for being here. Mahalo, as we say here in Hawaii. Mahalo.
Thanks a lot for having me, you guys. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And, one of the things too that I didn't know about you until I was, I actually really enjoyed the documentary Momentum Generation. That kind of blew me away. That documentary is about Shane's journey and other very, famous surfers that kind of all came up in this little tribe. And I think too, what I related to that documentary was how you all had each other's back as you came up through the surfing industry, and how that surfing industry didn't really quite exist at the level it does now. And you all had, to have a tribe, and this I've learned through Tim and Stephen, our other co-hosts, the StocksToTrade, is a tribe where you have people you can talk about, be vulnerable with, have people encourage you. I saw that in that documentary. I guess I'm just curious how much you feel that sense of tribe helped you as you were, coming up.
Yeah, it did. I mean, so much. I think most, I think most people can really relate to that film just because, growing up, most people have a group of friends that they grow up, whether you're from the Midwest or from the Northeast or from Hawaii or whatever, it's like you have a group of friends that you grow up, getting into trouble with or going to school with or whatever the deal is. And we were just really lucky because we were all super passionate about surfing. So surfing was the thing that kind of was our catalyst. It was the thing that brought all of us together. And we just, we ended up becoming a really strong group of friends from the time we were probably 13 or 14 all the way until now. And we're all from different places around the world. So it's really neat. And we still have a really close knit friendship with our whole group. And yeah, it's been great. You know, we're kind of like a band of brothers, and we are all on a really big group text thread, which is hilarious. Like every day I get funny jokes and we talk about whatever. And yeah, I'm just really, really lucky to be part of such a great group of friends.
Mm. Do you think my analogy of comparing the emotional fortitude you have to have for surfing is similar to what one would have to have for trading? Like, tell us about your trading as little or as much as you're comfortable with.
Trading's super easy.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
I sense the sarcasm. I sense the
I didn't. I was like, what? But you're a big wave surfer, so maybe everything after big wave surfing is easy.
Hey, I've taken big losses, but I've never been like crushed 50 feet underwater before. So yeah.
No, I definitely see some similarities between surfing really big waves and with trading. Obviously, the risk versus reward, and having to have a set of rules to guide your actions and to keep your emotions out of your decision making process. I think there's a lot of for me, when I'm surfing, like the way I approach really big waves is I have 2 little kids and a wife at home, and I have a lot of responsibilities. So for me, I have to be able to justify my choice to put myself in danger and surf really huge waves. I've had a number of friends that have passed away surfing big waves. And so for me, I have to take a lot of different precautions for myself. And so I've created a set of rules that I surf by, essentially. And so I sort of have to tick all these boxes in order for me to put myself at risk. And so when I approach a really big day surfing, I have to be able to say, okay, this is very risky. So I have to make sure that it's a very high reward, meaning, like the potential that I'm going to get the wave of my life, or the kind of ride that I'm going to remember forever is there. It's like a 9 out of 10 or better on a condition scale. It's like a 9 out of 10 or better on a size scale. The weather's right, the sun's out, the wind is calm, the waves are huge. I have a safety team in place. I have my safety gear in place. I'm feeling super confident physically, mentally. I've been doing my training. I have the great equipment. So all these things line up to give me confidence. And so I can go out there and, make a really good decision and surf with as little risk as possible with the biggest reward possible. And I just, for me, like having rules in place when I go and surf really big waves is essential.
Man, I tell you, first of all, love it. Obviously I know you haven't had time to listen to the podcast, but that's exactly the stuff I preach with trading, and hopefully Kim will have my back on this.
Totally.
Actually, I grabbed my little worksheet. You're talking about your 9 out of 10.
That's right.
I've got these 10 criteria that I preach all the time, and I tell people, I'm like, listen, if you're checking 3 out of 10 boxes, don't waste your time. The edge isn't there. The reward isn't there.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna lose money. Maybe you'll break even at best. And so I love that 9 out of 10. That's something I say all the time. And then the second thing, and hopefully this doesn't feel like too much of a bro fest, but I do the same thing with the fingers. When I'm breaking down these trades on the podcast, I'm like, okay, strong chart, good earnings, hot sector, this is the float, this is the market cap. And then there's always a couple negatives, but if you got 5 positives and 1 or 2 negatives, that's the trade you make. So
yeah, there's nothing perfect, but as long as like the probability is really high, you can minimize your risk and, be able to look at it from like that's just what I do, like with big waves, because the waves don't get really, really big really often, but it happens from time to time. But when the waves are epic and the conditions are right and it's a 9 out of 10 or better, that's extremely rare. So I spend most of my time preparing for those days. And when that window of opportunity is open and I feel like it's really worth the risk, then I go all in. And then that's when, I see my best results. And it's very similar with trading for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and especially, and I don't even know, are you familiar with the pattern day trader rule?
No.
You're probably not. Okay. So when you just a real quick breakdown for you, the audience knows, basically most of our listeners are, newer traders, just dabbling. They maybe got a couple $1,000. So if you have less than $25,000 in your account, you're limited to only 3-day trades in a rolling 5-day period. So that just exactly what you said is what I preach to people. I'm like, listen, if you can only trade a couple times a week, you can't be wasting your trades on these mediocre setups. And just like you, I mean, it's like, okay, this is the wave. I'm not going to miss it. Quit screwing with these mediocre setups because you're never going to grow your account. So,
well, it's pretty funny, the way our egos work, because we want, like naturally we crave the action and we always want to be in the market. We always want to be trying to like prove ourselves right, or, that's just all ego-based like decisions. So like, it's very similar with surfing. Like I have friends who do what I do, surfing big waves, and they chase every swell around the world, no matter how mediocre it looks. And because they just want that action, they want to participate. They just feel weird missing it. They have full FOMO. So I'm like, I just don't show up. I just like sit at home and chill and wait for the right setup to happen in the ocean. And it's very, very, very much the same with trading. I think that's one of those things where I think the rules really helps.
I mean, actually, Kim, I'll let you take over, but I mean, it's like, out of the 10 podcasts, I think Shane should be the new host, to be honest.
I think so too.
I think he's doing all my material, but doing it better.
So the heart of what you're talking about, that emotional, strength to notice the ego's in charge, and you got these guys, like I've known surfers too, who travel the world to find the perfect wave. When did you find you were able to notice that was your ego and not keep chasing? Like for the traders that are young and beginning here, they want to be in the action, especially now because of this market volatility. They're so excited. Even me, like Tim is teaching me and mentoring me. I'm actually very afraid because I do know how volatile it is. So I have this like, oh no, I don't want to go in there yet. But most of the traders I'm talking to, they can't wait to get in there. So what do you remember for your own journey when you were able to kind of subdue your ego? What was it that woke you up to it?
You mean my journey in surfing?
Yeah. And you can share, of course, your journey in trading, but
I think, I think particularly with surfing, because again, I think the things are so, they're analogous. Yeah. Is analogous the proper pronunciation?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Yeah, but there's definitely a lot of similarities and a common thread between the two. I think just like recognizing the risk and how much is at stake. Because with surfing, I had a couple of really close friends of mine die surfing big waves, guys I grew up surfing with and idolizing and surfing really huge waves with and having some close calls with, and those guys died. So that was just a really huge wake-up call. And then I had 2 really close calls in really big waves where I nearly drowned 2 times, where I felt like that was it. And so just being able to recognize how truly risky it is, made me really like take a step back, especially when I had kids. And I got married. I immediately had a different perspective of, really having to come up with a way where I could really justify what I was doing and continue surfing big waves. And so, one of the things I did was I started training like a madman so I could be as physically prepared as possible. And I had noticed a correlation between being extremely physically fit and having my mental confidence there. And so when I go to surf really big waves, I want to be extremely confident. And the way I get that is just being super mentally and physically prepared. So I do a lot of preparation on the off season. I would do a lot of preparation on the off times. I'd be in the gym 5 days a week. I'd be eating good, really taking care of myself. And I noticed that my performance went way up when I did that. And also being selective on the times where I would pull the trigger to chase a huge swell. And that was really just like noticing, having friends die, having close calls, seeing how truly easy it is to die surfing really huge waves. And so just seeing how risky it truly is, and not wanting to die. I want to live for a very long time. I want to surf
Yeah.
big waves for a long time. I really enjoy the ocean. But I have more important things to do than surf big waves. I love surfing with my children more than anything. And so I just see the big picture now. And some of the, I see a lot of similarities with trading, because some of the most successful traders that I've ever studied or met, they're probably in the market the least amount of time.
Wow.
And so that is just,
Good
it just
point.
goes to show, like, it's very similar with the best big wave surfers. They probably surf big waves the least now.
Wow.
They have a lot of experience on the way up, but
Yes.
now they really pick and choose their windows of opportunity. And I feel like that's very similar, like with the top traders. They feel totally comfortable being out of the market. And then when the window of opportunity opens, they feel totally comfortable, putting on that risk, when it's really worth it.
I wrote down a couple things from that, and 100% agree. I mean, we all, everybody hears about this 90% failure rate, but it's just, just like you mentioned with building that confidence and taking care of yourself and, and building up. I mean, I think one of the reasons the failure rate's so high is people are trying to surf that 50-footer day one. And, and in trading, the worst thing about trading is no one will stop you. I think that's, and that's where we call it the Steady Trade Podcast, because we try and get people just to take baby steps. But I mean, all you got to do is put money in your account, fire up your laptop, and man, no one will stop you from doing anything. So it's like,
the same with surfing, Tim.
Well, I know,
honestly,
but
you always speak about how there's nothing in the world that you can jump full force into without need, like surf, except for trading. Like, you don't need permission, you don't need a license, you don't have any requirements, but surfing is the same. You don't need, nobody's going to stop you. I've never thought of that until just this minute. Nobody's going to stop you, and you could easily, certainly in certain places, die the first. I mean, my second surfing lesson, I almost died. So, like, nobody is going to stop you.
Yeah. It's funny too how humans work, because we might spend 5 hours analyzing prices of a toaster on Amazon.com, but have no problem like buying like $5,000 worth of some penny stock that may or may not go up 500%.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. I see it every day.
All right. So on the other side of what you spoke to, Shane, when you did experience your own, near death, how did you find and what did you call on to have the courage to go back to surf again?
At the time, there was no safety equipment that the top guys were using. They just would paddle out with their wetsuit and surfboard, and that's it. So I developed a inflatable wetsuit. And so, like, the way that most big wave surfers die is, they drown. They're just underwater too long. And so they can't get back to the surface. So I thought, well, if I can make sure I get back to the surface, I'm going to survive. But, your chances of dying were very, very low if you're on the surface, because most of these big wave sessions, we have a safety team in place. And so as soon as you go down, there's someone looking for you. But if you're underwater, they can't see you and they can't find you. And there's too much white water and rocks and big waves happening. So they can't go and search for you. It's not like a diving expedition. It's like giant waves, white water everywhere. So if you're on the surface, they can see you. They can come get you with a jet ski, Yes. So, and so I developed this wetsuit essentially that has CO2 cartridges in the back with poles in the front. And so if I fall on a really big wave, I pull these poles, it inflates like a giant buoy on my back and front, and it pulls me to the surface. I don't know if you've seen that, like in backcountry skiing. Now they wear like a backpack, and if they get caught in like in an avalanche and they get taken down by an avalanche, they pull this thing and literally pulls them to the top of the avalanche as it's sliding, which is unbelievable that actually works. But it works really, really well in the ocean. And even though you have to hold your breath for a pretty long time, this suit will bring you up for sure to the surface. So it minimizes the risk by quite a lot. We had a lot of people dying in big waves for a number of years, very consistently actually. And then from the time where I came out with this suit, and there was nothing like it at the time, from the time we came out with a suit and made it available, there hasn't been a single death in big waves. And that was 2010 or 11. So it's been amazing. So it's not only made it a hell of a lot safer for me, and it helped me justify continuing doing what I'm passionate about, but also helped a lot of people as well come home safely. So I'm happy about that.
Beautiful. Thank you for inventing it. I mean, talk about turning a harrowing experience into something positive. It's incredible that you were even informed to, said, okay, I'm going to try to solve this. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I just was essentially trying to minimize my risk to be able to, make it worth doing. And, that's just like another rule that I have. I have to have the suit now. So,
yeah. Did you have, I presume that to be a big wave surfer, being a really good surfer on non-big waves is the only way you can kind of move to that level. Is that correct?
Yes and no. There's no barrier of entry to surfing big waves. It's just like it's the same thing in the stock market. If you have, if your grandpa gives you $100,000 in his will,
yep.
Like there's no barrier of entry to the stock market. You can just go blow yourself up in 1 week. And it's like that in surfing. When the waves get big, you can jump on your surfboard and paddle straight into the lineup and drown if you want to. And so you do have a lot of tough guys and a lot of people who have a lot of ego that don't have much experience, and they want to, go to the bar that night and tell everybody they surf giant waves that day at Half Moon Bay or at Jaws or whatever these big wave spots are. And so you get people that have very little experience and don't have the ability level, and they just go out there and they're kind of like cowboys. But you get like that in just every single thing that has risk. You have that type of, personality type. I don't know what you'd just call that, but that cowboy mentality. So
you joked about that in penny stocks. I mean, again, penny stocks is filled with it, with it, of these guys, and it's funny. I've been around, I've been doing this full time for 15 years now, but man, it's like social media. It always used to happen, but now it's worse because just like you said, I call them the bros, obviously, because I'm almost 50, but there's these bros that want to make these big gains and brag on social media, just like the big wave guys want to go to the bar and brag. And and it bums me out, but I see it all the time because these guys will post big gains. They'll yap nonstop on social media for like a month, and all of a sudden, poof, they're gone. And it's like, well, I know what happened. It happens over and over again,
Oh yeah.
But they're doing it for ego. They're doing it because they want to brag. I made $5,000 today. I made $10,000 today.
Well, and there have been a big rush.
Yeah.
I think that saying, I'm going to totally botch it, but I've heard it and I love it. And it's, people overestimate what they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years.
Yep.
I think people are in a huge rush to become some incredibly successful stock trader or, options trader or whatever it is, or big wave surfer. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
We lack the patience. And if you can have a longer timeline of a learning curve, number one, you keep yourself out of trouble. You protect your psychology by not getting yourself into trouble. And then, over time you gain a lot of experience. I think, having that kind of perspective is healthier.
So Kim,
dealing with
I'm going to push it back on you, Kim. So,
yeah.
Okay. So the 22-year-old, 22-year-old version of Shane and I, that likes to take risks, that doesn't have a family, doesn't think about tomorrow.
Right.
When I was 22 years old, I don't even know if I thought about later today, okay. Ego. I mean, how do I control this, or how do I manage this?
I think the question wouldn't even be posed probably by most, let's just say immature 22-year-olds. Like I do know a couple of 22-year-olds that are old souls that are self-reflective, but not that many.
One or two on the planet, maybe.
Maybe a handful more, but I'm a little more optimistic than you. But I think it's a really good question, but it feels to me, even with what Shane's speaking to, you really just can't see your vulnerability until you see it. So it sounds like, Shane, you saw it first with what happened to friends of yours. Then you saw it for yourself personally. And that maybe perhaps, how can it not mature you? How can it not make you start to become more aware? I mean, that's probably what has to happen for every 22-year-old. And that's just maturity, right? You have to have the courage to go into something, and then you have to, see how you do. And then, but I think trading, and I do think surfing it humbles you freaking fast. Like it doesn't take long for you to get the memo. This is serious shit.
Yeah, no kidding. It's so funny because I've been so to get into the trading thing, I've been trading since 2004.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Okay, cool.
And I have a really close group of friends who are all in the surf world that are really high level surfers, and a really close group of friends of mine, and they're all very relatively new traders, and they have, they're very interested in trading, and they have some money, and so they wanted to learn as a group. And so I suggested, let's start a Robinhood group, let's start a text thread, and we'll all put in the same amount of money, and we'll learn through our group. And I had a lot more experience than those guys. I'm not a better trader than them, but I had more experience. So, it's just been really interesting and everybody has a different style of trading. Everybody has a different personality type. Mm-hmm. And you see everybody from people who just have no tolerance for research and they just want a stock tip to
Totally.
like the buy and hold no matter what type of person.
Totally.
Who have no problem like buying something and watch it go down 95%.
So does it seem like that showing up in their trading, since you know them personally and as surfers, does it match their temperament, their personality as a surfer?
Not a little bit. One of the guys is incredibly like the various. There's probably two people in my group that are like as the very top of surfing as far as pro surfers go.
Yeah.
And one of them is very methodical. He's very he's a quick learner. He's really interested in like the fundamentals of companies and doing his research, and he's not like a plunger. Mm-hmm. And it's been neat to see his account because it's like a steady grower, and he's able to keep himself out of trouble in rougher markets. And then the other guy is just a total plunger, doesn't like to do any research, just blows himself up over and over. And, we have a little bit of everything. And then we have a guy who's only started like maybe like a year ago, and he's kind of a crazy plunger, and his account is crazy volatile, but he has like insane knack for like anticipating moves in the market, and he's got some balls on him, but it's just his account is so erratic and so wild that I'm like, dude, you have to think of this as like a 20 or 30 year situation. You don't want to lose your psychology and lose your confidence by, I don't know how long you can withstand that emotional roller coaster of that kind of volatility in your account. So it's
now,
just
what do you get? I'm always looking to learn. I'm always curious. What do you guys? What kind of setups? Like what's like a trade you were talking about recently or something?
Well, I trade totally differently from those guys.
Okay.
I don't know what you'd call it. I'm like a intermediate term position trader.
Okay.
So I buy technical setups of companies that I really want to own. So I try to stick to businesses that I can understand the way they make money.
Beautiful. So
I stick to like technology stocks. Like a couple of stocks I own right now is like Coupa Software, AMD, Microsoft. What else do I have right now? Norton LifeLock.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that company.
Yep.
Anyway,
gapped up big the other day, actually.
Yeah. It's, I try to trade relative, like kind of like high relative strength names that have good sales and earnings, stuff that has good ROE, stuff that I understand the way they make money, like I said, and companies that have good institutional sponsorship, have like an increasing number of funds that own the companies. And yeah, so I try to stick to those kind of companies. And then when I find companies that I really want to own, I try to find low risk entry points. And I try to really exercise patience when waiting for those types of situations to set up. And then I try to make all those decisions before the market opens, like the night before or before the open, which is really difficult here in Hawaii because the market right now is opening at like 3:30 in the morning.
Sure.
So it's really tricky.
Now, now I got two questions. I'm curious, the guy with the crazy account, swings.
Yeah.
Is he what's is he in penny stocks or what's he doing?
No, he's not. Well, he was.
Okay.
He was.
I had a feeling he was a penny stock guy.
He, it's just like the standard, like exactly what you think people are going to be into. Just trying to discover companies, which is that's my number one rule. Don't try to discover anything. For me, I'm like the master of the obvious.
Yep.
That's like my goal is to like trade the most obvious stocks. I have no need to try and discover the next true great diabetes penny stock that nobody knows of yet. Because the things that I've missed that were so obvious, like I ride for Monster Energy. I started riding for Monster Energy in 2004. I never bought the stock. Watched it go up 8,000%, sitting on the sidelines. And that was like the most obvious. Like they were like the hottest brand.
Brand. I mean, they were everywhere.
Yeah, and the stock went up 8,000%.
Yeah,
in 6 years or 7 years. And then this the different examples of like super obvious stuff is when my wife started buying Amazon product. The boxes started showing up at my house. If I would have just bought the stock right then, I would have paid for all of our Amazon spending for the rest of my life. Lululemon. If I would have started buying Lululemon when all the pairs of Lululemon pants started showing up at my house from my wife shopping, I would probably be retired.
I'm the same way with Chewy. I still have never traded Chewy, but there's a freaking Chewy box on my doorstep every other day because we got dogs and cats,
right?
And that stock's at 52-week highs. I'm like, why didn't when there's more Chewy boxes than Amazon boxes? Come on, idiot, buy Chewy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Pretty funny.
Oh God. All right. So what is the overlap, Shane, for you when you've looked at just what you've journeyed through with your surfing? And I mean, it's a long time now you've been trading. So what do you see the overlap of the best qualities?
I think it's just probably patience is the number one thing that I see the common thread with the type of surfing that I focus on.
Yeah.
Having the patience to learn over time and having the patience to wait for the right wave or the right conditions, have the right equipment, be totally prepared, physically, mentally, have the right mindset and really, make decisions beforehand. And then and then have a plan if things go wrong. I'm like that with really big waves. I always have a plan. Like I've flown to Portugal last minute, bought a $3,000 ticket, packed in 1 hour, drove to the airport, flew all the way to Portugal from my house in Kona for a huge wave, for a huge swell. It was like a once in a year swell. Showed up, crazy jet lag, stayed up all night. Next morning, totally exhausted, couldn't stop falling asleep. Waves were massive, 80 feet. Wow. And I paddled out in the ocean and I had extreme jet lag and I had spent like $5,000 to go on this trip. And I had a huge film crew and all this, we had a safety crew, all those things were happening, but it wasn't the right day for me. I had a bad feeling. I wasn't feeling 100%. I had no energy. I had crazy jet lag. I had like a runny nose. Just like all these things were lining up to where they didn't match my rules of doing this in the best way I can. And so I just ate that cost and I didn't fight my ego. And I just got back on the jet ski, went back to the airport and flew home. And I was totally fine with that. And that's the way I am with my trades. Things go against me, I'm out. That's it. Totally unemotional. I have rules in place. And that has helped me so much, can't even tell you.
Wow. Yeah, I tell you,
and that just comes from experience of not doing it, right?
Right. Yeah. If we ever renamed the podcast, it would probably be the Have a Plan podcast. I'm sure the listeners probably are. So they're probably like, oh God, here goes Tim on Have a Plan. But man, I just see it all the time. Yeah. Where, I love that you brought up FOMO a little while ago. I mean, people see this big mover and they get in and then it's like, and then it turns. And then it's like, well, like the classic, what everybody does first of all, they don't have a stop. They don't have a plan. They just jump in. It turns on them. Then they start like Googling and reading the news. You know, they're like, oh, what's the news on the stock? You know, it's like, well,
it's the worst thing ever.
Yeah. It's like, maybe you should
Never
read
do
the news before you got in.
Yeah.
And I love your analogy. I mean, you took the stop, you know, with that trip. That's just, you got, you know, you had $5,000 in,
right there.
You hit your $5,000, you took your stop. You didn't go out there and risk your life, just like you didn't risk your account. Yeah, you lost $5,000, but you took a stop, and $5,000 is an acceptable loss versus your life or getting hurt or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Well, and you live to fight another day, right?
Yep.
And, you know, and you keep your powder dry, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How old were you when you started surfing?
5 on a surfboard.
Damn.
So I started, you know, riding waves like on a bodyboard and body surfing when I was 3. So like right when I started learning to walk, I started learning to swim. And as soon as I learned to swim, I started riding waves. So I grew up here in Hawaii. I was born and raised, and my family had a little restaurant by the beach, and there was a little place to ride waves there. And so I just grew up fishing and surfing and riding waves. So
when do you think you knew that surfing really was like calling you? Like I liken it to like a priesthood, like when you have the calling, you know, when did that happen for you?
I didn't even have a calling. It was just who I was. Absolutely sure that's who I was, and this is what I was supposed to be doing. When I started surfing, I just fell absolutely head over heels in love with surfing, and just I had to do it. I had to have it in my life, and I felt like it was part of my DNA, straight from day one. And I knew that's what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life. Whether it was, you know, I never anticipated doing it for a living, but I knew surfing was going to be in my life forever. So
it's pretty wild. That story, I mean, as you're telling it, just totally reminds me of my son. So I'd always kind of dabbled in fishing. You know, I've fished my whole life, but my son, I mean, before he could talk, he was casting a rod, baiting his hook, and taking fish off. We have videos of him, can't even talk, and he's doing this stuff. I mean, he spends 200 plus days on the water a year, you know, in Michigan, you know, because you can't, obviously the lake's frozen half the year. Yeah. And, you know, he might be a professional fisherman. He might end up taking that route. We'll see. Yeah. But, you know, and it's funny. It's just like, he's just got it. You know, it's like we fish together all the time. We're on the same boat, same equipment. He'll always catch more fish, and he'll always catch bigger fish. And I'm like, how? I'm like, I cast right to that same spot, you know? So, but it just, as you were telling that, it just totally made me think of him. And I didn't teach him to fish. You know, he just had it, you know?
Right.
Well, your son Jackson now is also moving very much, it seems, in your shadow. So do you feel that he as well had this inclination towards it? He was about that same age, wasn't he, as you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was a lot different for him, you know, cause my dad surfed when he was very young, but he wasn't surfing when I started. And so I never really surfed with my dad. And so I found surfing really on my own. And so it was it was almost like finding, like religion, like, you know, people who find God, like in this, that don't come from like never went to church before in their whole lives, and were totally like unaffected by any kind of influence. And all of a sudden they find God, and it's like, that's who they are. That's how I was with surfing. There was no one telling me to do it. And so it's a little different with my son, because it's who I am. It's what I do for a living. And, you know, all my life is so affected and influenced by surfing. So when I had a son, of course I wanted to, my perspective was I wanted to share that gift with him, because it's been such an important part of my life, totally separate from doing it for a living, but just for my happiness, or my soul, for my sanity. Surfing has been like the number one thing in my life. It's how I met every single friend I have. It's how I met my wife. And so for me, it's just been a really positive thing in my life in every single way. So I wanted to give that to him, of course. And of course, I took him surfing when he was tiny, when he didn't have a choice. And I made sure it was fun. I made sure it was safe. And I made sure it was something that, you know, was a really good time for us to bond and spend time together. But as soon as he could choose, he fell in love with skateboarding. And so for about a 3-year period, he didn't want to surf. He was like, that's your thing, Dad. you surf, I'm a skateboarder.
Okay.
And so I had to be really patient. And so I took him to the skateboard park for about 2 or 3 years straight. And then from time to time, I'd be like, dude, I'm going to go to the skateboard park with you for 5 hours. You can at least go catch 10 waves with me.
Exactly.
And so I had to wait for a while, but he came back to surfing on his own.
Wow.
And really fell in love with it in a really natural way. And yeah, he's become really good at it, and he's got sponsors, and he's starting to go on trips, and he's basically like a pro surfer at 13, which is pretty strange.
It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. I was very touched with an interview of him where he talked about what his father taught him. And he said that you taught him to be kind and humble. And I was just blown away by that. I thought that was like
funny.
pretty beautiful for him.
He's a good kid. Yeah.
You could see it. You could see even the seriousness he took of that question, and how much those two qualities, like he really gets what those qualities mean. It was pretty impressive.
I hope so.
Yeah, it definitely came across like that. It did.
A couple more questions. We'll kind of head home here, but now I wanted to ask this in the beginning, but what kind of got you started in trading? What brought you to it? So.
Oh man. So this is a wild story. 2003, actually. I was friends with this guy that I surfed with, and one day we went surfing all day. And while we were driving, we went like on a road trip, like an hour and a half away from my house to go surf. And on that road trip, he was like, my dad, he lives in the Bay Area. He runs this big coffee business, and he wants me to move to the Bay Area to learn the business, take over the business. And his dad owned the Coffee Bean, the chain.
Yep.
Yeah. And so he's like, he's a waiter, this dude. And he was like, I don't want to be rich. I don't want to live in the Bay Area. I don't want to work 9 to 5 in a cubicle. I don't want to take over any business. He's like, I have no interest in it. And so he told his dad that, and they were estranged or whatever. And his dad told him, well, if you have any money at all, invest in Starbucks. Because he's like, I know the coffee business.
Wow.
They're a competitor. They're a public company. So if you have any money and you want to make money over the next 10 years, I know their plan. They're going to absolutely crush it. And so he was telling me this on the drive, and I was just thinking about it. And I was like, I didn't drink coffee at the time, but every time I drove by a Starbucks, there was a line out the door. And I thought the story was over already, because this is 2003. But at the time, I thought Starbucks was everywhere, and I thought the story was over. I thought it was and I didn't know anything about stocks, but as soon as I had a little bit of money, I think I had like $5,000 that was saved up at the time. And it was with my financial advisor, but it was in cash. And I got out of the car, walked into my house, picked up the phone, called my financial advisor, said, I want to put my whole $5,000 into Starbucks stock. And he's like, are you sure? And I said, yes. And he's like, okay.
Wow.
What do you buy today? And so I bought Starbucks. I held it for 3 years. And so the next year, and so it went nuts. It was right after the 2000 to 2002 bear market. I bought it in 2003. And so that one started going up, and in the meantime, the next summer I bought my first iPod. And it was that white Apple click wheel iPod, had a little circle on the bottom.
Yep.
And at the time I was traveling on the tour. So in surfing, you have like a world tour where you compete in events all around the world. And so at the time I was traveling with a backpack full of CDs because like my life was traveling, and I was on planes all the time. So I had all the music that I could listen to, because at the time there was no, like nobody had like a laptop with Netflix or anything like that.
There's no Wi-Fi. There's no.
Yeah, your only entertainment was music.
Yeah.
So I had a whole backpack full of these massive magazines of CDs. And so I bought this click wheel iPod, and like my 8 friends that I travel with on the tour, every single person bought the same exact iPod, and we all went to France that week. We were in California. We bought the iPods the week they came out. We went to France. We all stayed in 2 big houses together. And in 3 days, I had all of my friends' music collections on my iPod. And I just couldn't believe it. And all of a sudden, my huge backpack full of CDs was obsolete. And I just went, there's no way this is real. I have 10,000 songs on this little thing. It's this big. I don't have to carry this backpack. Like, what am I going to do? The backpack was like, the thing was useless. And I just had a full, I was like, it couldn't have been any more clear. And so I call my financial advisor, and at the time I had more money that was saved. And I said, I want to put everything I have in Apple. This is a game changer. And so I owned Starbucks for about a year at that time. And then I bought Apple. And then at that time when I bought Apple, my Starbucks was already up like 300% because I had no like plan of selling. It was just buying this idea. Right. And so it's like a buy and hold type of situation. And so I bought Apple, and then that started going up, and now that thing was up like 350% in like a year and a half. And I just went, there's no way it's this easy. There's no way. It's impossible. Money that's this easy. And so I just become obsessed with trying to learn. And so it's a kind of a long story, but then I started reading like all the Warren Buffett biographies, and I started reading all the, like all of the stock books I could and trying to understand the market. And then I found William O'Neill's books, and you know, like the Warren Buffett thing was really, really interesting, but I really just didn't get it. I knew I wasn't a value investor. And then I started reading like all the William O'Neill books and started going to his learning seminars.
Oh, beautiful.
in Los Angeles. And I just got it. I just really understood growth stocks. I loved researching them. I loved, you know, buying what I knew. And yeah, that was a start, and I became obsessed.
Now, so that leads to my next question.
So those two first stocks were my biggest winners of all time.
Well, sure. Which
Those are hard to top. Those are hard to top.
Which again is that's like the penny stock story. That's what most people happen in penny stocks. They buy 2 penny stocks that double and then they blow up. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I knew I wasn't the smartest guy on earth, but I knew that I had gotten really lucky with those two. Those are really unique experiences. So I wanted to try and figure it out to where I could know what I was doing. And I just thought, you know, I'm pretty young. At the time I was really young. And I was like, man, if this thing takes me 5 years or 10 years to figure out, you know, at that time when I'm done surfing, I'll have a plan, and I can do this the rest of my life, because I love doing it. I'm super passionate about trading. I'm super passionate about investing. So
that's where I was headed, man. I could tell you got the bug. You know, like I've had the bug. You know, I've told the story on the podcast. I actually remember looking at the finance pages like in elementary school. I've just always had this bug in me. So that was my next question. I mean, I could tell it's in you. I love it. What's your plans for the future? Hedge fund? Dorian Capital?
No, I tried that.
Oh, really?
Did you? So I reached out to 10 close friends of mine, and I wanted to see if I had what it took to trade other people's money. And so
interesting. Tell this story. I want to hear this.
Yeah, tell it.
And so I had 10 friends put in $2,000 each. And I just started an account with that $20,000. And I just said, hey, like, this is what it is. And I wrote down this, you know, like a prospectus of a hedge fund. And it was very informal, as close friends. And it was just and it wasn't anything for me to make money. So I put in $2,000 as well. And so it was just like an experiment to see if I had what it took to trade it like it was my own account, and see if I could keep my emotions under control when I was trading other people's money instead of my own. And I didn't have what it took. I definitely underperformed in that account. And after 2 years, I gave everybody their money back. It was actually a treacherous time in the market. It was, at the start of it, it was like maybe 4 or 5 months, the end of 2007. So it went into that massive bear market, and it was fine because I'm a trend follower. So I was out of the market, but yeah, it just stressed me out way too much to deal with other people's money.
Man, I tell you, it's funny. That's the reason I wanted to hear that story is 10 years ago when I started getting consistent, same story, exact same. Had some friends, you know, I'm telling them I'm doing well. And so they keep bugging me. I'm like, no. And then I'm finally, okay, I'll do it. So I take their money, and I did pretty well for them. I think like 30% in 6 months, but it was gross. I did not like it. I just was like, it took all the fun out of it, because it was like, now I turned it from something that I was like, you know, it was, I don't know, it'd be like, you know, like getting paid to hunt or something, you know, it just kind of like took the fun out of it.
Yeah.
And so 6 months I was like, I'm up. They were bummed, but I'm like, here's your money plus your gains. I'm like, it's gross. I don't like it. so
Yeah.
it changed it,
Yeah. It was a fun experiment, and I learned a lot about myself, and that was the goal. So yeah, I think it made me a better trader, made me respect risk a lot more, and it was good for sure. And I'm really, really close friends with that whole same group of people now. So it was good.
That's awesome. And you started with O'Neill too, right, Tim?
Yeah. So like when I
okay.
finally, like when I got serious, so, roughly 2005, 2006, my business was mature. It was doing well, but I was bored. And I was like, I want to learn trading. And yep, I still subscribe to Investors Business Daily today. I read it every day. But I get the same thing. I started out reading all those. You probably got them too, the little pamphlets with all the, you get like one a week or one a month with the Can Slim. Yep. So yeah, same thing. Now, the only difference with my story, and I still trade a lot of the stuff like that you do, the higher cap tech stocks, but basically where I got to the point where when I was ready to retire and sell my business, I just was like, I was looking at penny stocks and in lower price, not like true penny stocks. Most of my stuff's like $5 to $10, but I was just like, man, I can recognize these chart patterns, recognize these setups. And I just like the bigger moves more because I didn't, I had the time. Once I sold the business, I had the time. I could stare at the monitors all day long, but I still use the Can Slim stuff. Still same to slightly modified, but same idea. So
same patterns as well.
Yep. Same stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. So
interesting.
Awesome. So what would you say would be your 1 or 2 or 3 tips to a beginner trader who is, needing to have the discipline, maybe a little bit of the inspiration and the guts to do this work? What would you say based on your trading experience and or your,
or
surfing?
even your like with your friends, too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally. You've given them advice. What has that advice been for our listeners who are mostly beginners?
First of all, I'd say just make sure that you're passionate about it.
Yes.
If you're not, find someone good to manage your money for you. And that's totally fine too. If you don't have the time, if you don't have the passion, if you don't care about understanding it, if all you're in it is for the money, then save your money and invest and have someone else trade it for you. I think.
I love it. Yep.
That's the number one thing I would say. If you're truly passionate about it, go all in. And I'm not talking financially. I'm talking about all in with your education. Read as much as you can. Find stuff that you truly understand. Whether it's a system or whether it's whether you're a value investor or a growth investor or a momentum trader or penny stock, whatever you get, there's great systems out there, and find a rules-based system that you understand, and definitely have a plan. Have a plan to get in, have a plan to get out every single time, and don't blow yourself up.
Yeah, I tell you, like again, when I got serious, I had a business with 20 employees, thousands of customers. I had 2 toddlers, but when you say go all in, I was getting up at 5 a.m. every day to read books, look at chart patterns, because I'm like, this is, because I had the passion. And again, I love what you say. And I say that a lot. I mean, like, if you're getting in this because you need the money or you want to make money, man, good luck, because it's like, you might succeed, but I mean, the people that are really good and the people that are around 15 years later, like you are, love it. And it's, and I think so many people just get in it because they're like, well, I need to make money. And especially if you need to make money. I mean, if you're worrying about next month's mortgage payment, man, good luck, so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a great time too, it's for anybody who's new, to go through, like a waterfall bear market like this. It's been super treacherous. I guess depending, if you're a day trader, you probably love the volatility, but
right.
it's been an amazing market to watch and live through and trade through. And it's just this hasn't happened in a very long time. So I think, like, looking forward, there's a lot of really neat opportunities. And I think, if you still have an account after the last 4 months, that's a good sign.
Now, what do you use for most of your research? You use a platform, or what do you use?
I really stick to O'Neill's principles. It's that I'm hyper focused on that. But
Okay.
I am a member on Mark Minervini's platform. I don't know if you know Mark
Yep.
Minervini.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's incredible trader. But he's like an O'Neill disciple. He worships Bill O'Neill, and so it's all like Bill O'Neill's teaching. But Mark Minervini has like a great way of explaining things, and he's very, very detailed and super precise. He only trades like super crisp setups, and he never chases any stock. I just really get what he's saying, and his discipline is out of this world. And so I love being on his platform every day and like seeing it and learning in real time, sort of side by side with what he's doing and his group is doing. And he has like some incredible, and when I'm talking incredible traders on there. They're really, really good. And I'm always reading. I'm always reading a lot of different books. I have some right here. It's one of my favorites.
Cool. Oh,
Reminiscences.
yeah.
You guys like that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
One of the best, man. So
Trade Like an O'Neill Disciple.
Okay.
Trading in the Cockpit with the O'Neill Disciples. What else do I got? How to Make Money in Stocks, Success Stories.
That's classic.
But I'm always reading. I love books. I love podcasts. And IBD has a new podcast called Investing with IBD that my friend Arusha Paris does. He's a host, and it's really good. It's amazing. He has great traders on there. So I usually listen to a couple podcasts a day. I do a lot of reading, and then I do market research where I'm researching the companies I'm interested in, catching up on news. I'm not really a news person or an analyst person, but I just like to read and research and build conviction in the companies I like, and learning more and more about rad companies out there doing really innovative things.
Man, I tell you, again, it's like, I know I already said the brofest thing, but it's like, I'm exactly the same way. I mean, I don't watch TV. I don't watch sports. I don't know what the Kardashians are doing today.
Yeah.
I barely know what's going on in politics. All I read is books or Wall Street Journal or Barron's or IBD. And, again, I think one of the reasons you and I are both here 15 years later is because of that. Is that you just got to love it, man. So,
yeah. You just have to have excitement because there's so many neat opportunities coming up.
It's always every day there's something new. Yep.
I'm such an optimist, and this in 2020, there's going to be a lot of stocks that go up 100%, 200%, 300%. And we just got to be there to find them and have the balls to stick with them once we get in there, so. Excited.
Well, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot you some emails. I'd like you to maybe check out StocksToTrade. Now, StocksToTrade is good for all prices of stocks, but we're kind of geared more towards lower priced penny stocks. But I'll send you a link. Check it out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So yeah.
Cool. Shane, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing like what your journey's been as a trader. I mean, I don't think I knew that you were going to speak about it so robustly. So I'm very excited that you were willing to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, me neither. I'm definitely an amateur trader. And that's why
I think you're an awesome guest, man. I love it because again, like I said, most 99% of our listeners, I'm guessing, I don't know, they're under a year into this. So it's like, hearing your journey and that's what people want to hear. And I think that's what people need to hear.
Yes.
Stuff you said, right back to the beginning, the 10 criteria and having a plan and, and all of that. I mean, that's what our listeners need to hear. So
I should probably tell you one more thing. And this would be good for someone who's a little bit new to trading, because they probably relate to this. Is my plan was after the Apple Starbucks experience for me, I'm really close friends with my financial advisor, same guy still, and he's really good, super conservative. And he was even though I had those two big winners and everything, he was like, look, that's highly unusual. 90% of people who try to trade their own accounts blow themselves up. So really, really watch it and, do it small at the start. And so what I did was I had a managed account with Morgan Stanley, normal asset allocation, basic account. And my plan was I had a small trading account, like maybe 5% of my tradable assets. And basically I had that to play with.
Yep.
And I wasn't playing with it, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And so I told my financial advisor, I said, every year that I outperform your managers, I'm going to take a little piece from your side and put it on my side.
Did you really?
Yeah.
How do you handle that? How do you handle that?
He said, that's totally fair.
Yep.
Wow.
And so every year that I outperformed their managers, I took like 5% and put it on my side. 5% put it on my side. And like, I think 7 out of 10 years I outperformed the
Beautiful.
That is so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So how does he handle that?
The
How do you
point
handle
was,
that?
I started very slow is my point. So
Yep.
I didn't want to get myself into trouble. I wanted to learn. And I knew it was going to take a long time. It's so difficult. I mean, you're competing with extremely intelligent people.
The smartest people in the world, man. Yep.
Yeah. So that was the way that I try to minimize my risk over time. And still, like now at this age and where I am now, I still also want to trade only a certain size account. So I try to give him more stuff to have managed for me. So I still, even though my account's grown over time, I want to minimize my risk. So I don't take on more than I feel comfortable with.
And great tip. And that's something I tell people too. I'm like, especially if you're completely new, like you told that story of somebody that, you know, their grandpa dies and gives them $100,000. I'm like, please take 5. Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, and leave that 95, you know, and take that 5, see if you can turn it into 7, see if you can turn it into 10, 2 or 3 times. Okay. Yeah. Make sure like you did with your 7 out of 10 years, then, you know, dip into that, but don't take the 100, please. You know, start out small and see if you know, and we talk about paper trading a lot. Paper trading has pros and cons, but I tell people, you know, like if you can't make money paper trading, good luck with real money. You know? Right. So.
And that's the humility. That's what, you know, and your son said that's what you taught him. So if you taught your son, you're clearly practicing yourself. Your humility enough to know to tell your you know, your finance manager, like, hey, watch this because I'm going to just work with this. Like that to me seems like pragmatic and wanting to be somewhat adventurous, but, you know, keeping aware and conscious of all the factors that are beyond your control, all of our control. So that's awesome. It's such a great story. I'm glad you put that in there at the end.
Yeah. Well, Jane, again, you know, I you know, when Kim and I were talking, I thought we would be like, you know, 95% surfing and 5% trading. It was like exact opposite, man. This was awesome. I love it, man. Would love to have you back, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
You know, again, I feel like we barely scratched the surface. I you know, all Kim told me was, you know, I knew you from Rogan's podcast and stuff. Yeah. And Kim was like, oh, you know, he kind of dabbles in stocks. I didn't know you'd been doing it for 16 years.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, man. I absolutely love it. So yeah, I mean, anytime you guys want me to, you know, come back on, I will for sure.
Thank you, Shane, so much, and for just being an inspiration in, you know, so many ways. And if you guys, our viewers, haven't watched Momentum Generation, you guys got to watch it because it's going to speak to you whether you're a surfer or not. It's about tribe. It's about having each other's back. It's also about success. What does success really look like for you individually, and to not just, you know, not to think, you got to think long-term around friends, relationships, the people that you're spending all your time with. That was the other thing that I thought was amazing about that documentary. Is it really helped people. I hope it helped people look at like the long-term effects of the choices we make. I mean, that's the heart of what I think that film is about.
Yeah, for sure. So, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much. So much,
Shane. And hope to see you again, man. Thanks a lot. So.
Same here. Thanks, guys.